Football is a sport we have come to love because of the unbelievable plays, from the ankle-breaking runs of LaShawn McCoy to the insane one-handed catches made by Odell Beckham. The sport is exciting and fun to watch. But one thing that is overlooked by nearly everyone is the health risks to these players. Jarring hits like these on the players are glorified in social media, but they pose a real danger to the person getting hit. Concussions in the NFL, or National Football League, is one of the most highly debated topics in the world of sports. Is the NFL a safe enough place for players to play? Answer is no. Every year, pro players are forced to retire because of the pounding their bodies endure on the field. What is the most common injury? You guessed it, concussions. First off, what really is a concussion? A concussion is defined as a complex pathophysiological process that affects the functionality of the brain, typically induced by a trauma to the brain. It is often caused by a direct blow to the head or an indirect blow, causing the head to whiplash around, both of which result in the brain moving rapidly inside the skull and hitting the inner walls. Most common effects of this include physical effects such as headaches or nausea, cognitive effects such as difficulty with memory and concentration, and emotional effects like irritability or depression. Now back to our main question. Why is this sport so taxing on the players? Is it simply the competitive nature of the game, or is it more than that? Let's look at some of the facts first. A survey conducted by the Washington Post paints an interesting picture about what really happened to these players during their careers. An overwhelming amount of veterans are in extreme pain every day. One ex-quarterback, Don Majkowski, 17 years removed from his career, experiences continuous crippling pain every day. He can no longer hold down a job. He can't stand for long periods of time. Even sitting is difficult for him. After it was all said and done, he has undergone nearly 20 surgeries related to football, has a 12-inch scar on his stomach, and can't walk very far because his left foot is fused with a metal plate and 13 screws. Majkowski stated, quote, "It's like walking on a pirate leg." Not only that, but he also experienced bone spurs, torn cartilage, and has to deal with agonizing arthritis daily. His body is so frail, he ruptured his Achilles tendon simply walking up the stairs to his bedroom one day. In the end, he is still one of the luckier players because he is financially stable. This veteran is one of many who experiences the after effects of an NFL career, and he showed us how bad it can really be. A startling number of veterans report having at least one major injury in their career, more than 9 in 10. More than half the survey also reported 3 or more injuries, while 1 in 5 reported 5 or more major injuries. That kind of abuse and beating on your body would take a huge toll. After their career, nearly half the players surveyed have needed a joint replacement, and 83 of these men have had to have at least one orthopedic surgery. Even with all of these major injuries, we haven't begun to talk about the brain damage they have suffered. Concussions definitely pose the biggest health threat. 9 out of 10 players in the survey reported having suffered at least one concussion over their career, and they all feel it right now. But now we have to go beyond the facts. What is the cause of all this brutal punishment the players have to suffer? One main reason major injuries in this league are so prevalent is that big hits on defenseless players are glorified in the media. Players who always try to make big hits, such as linebacker Ray Lewis, are idolized by today's youth. There are countless pages on social media, an overwhelming amount of videos on YouTube, and even announcers who all support these big hits because of their entertainment value. These fans are bloodthirsty and hungry for violence on the field. They act like we live in Rome and are in the Colosseum watching gladiators fight to the death. Many of the retired players realize the effect this has on current players and are speaking out against the league. According to the New York Times, 5,000 veterans are suing the NFL for lack of player protection and for hiding the dangers of concussions. For years, the executives in the NFL denied that there was any connection between the league and brain disease, but recent studies that came out proved that actually more than 1 in 3 former players suffer brain damage. Chris Nowinski, director of the Sports Legacy Institute, states that the number of former players that develop dementia is staggering, even excluding those who develop mood or behavior disorders. Eventually, in this case, both sides ended up reaching an agreement where former players would receive a $950 million pool to cover up the injuries they had during their career. Obviously, some of them are beyond help. For example, those who suffered serious uncompensable injuries. Many of these players suffer from Alzheimer's disease, dementia, or CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a progressive degenerative brain disease found almost exclusively in athletes. This proves that the executives of the NFL try to cover these effects up so they can continue to get rich. This thirst for blood, combined with the lack of protection and medical care for the players, can be a deadly combo, and definitely takes its toll on the players later in their life. However, this is not the only reason for the overwhelming amount of injuries and trauma suffered in the NFL every year. What can be the biggest desire for these players to throw away their future and lay down their bodies purely for entertainment? Money. The monetary incentive for the players is too big for them to resist. If you don't play, they don't pay. You will get cut if you are not on the field. This is why we play through injuries. We have to feed our families. Quote from an unnamed offensive lineman who suffered over 15 concussions throughout his career. These players are forced to play through any injuries that might occur because if they aren't on the field, they will get cut. In addition to this, most of the time the team's interests are first priority, players' health is the second. Half of the players surveyed stated that this was true. The medical staff cared more about the team's interests than the players' health. Almost one-third of them went to go get medical advice from someone outside of the organization, and they were all discouraged by coaches and staff. So they just went back out there. In the NFL, there was a sort of mantra: if you don't hurt while playing, you're not playing. Many of the players wish they played through their pain less. Fred Smoot gives us deep and realistic insight as to what it was like to play through his injuries. Over his 9-year career, he lost count of the number of concussions he suffered because they occurred so often. Quote, there were many times I'm on the field and I'm praying the quarterback don't throw my way because I don't know what's going on. It was a glaze or the fog over the eyes, he recounts. Frightening stories such as this one show what is really happening to all these injured players. They are expected by nearly everyone to go back out there and play through their pain, no matter how bad the injury is. So they do it because they have to keep their family life steady and be able to provide for them. Kurt Warner, another ex-quarterback, shows how concussions played a huge role in his career. He suffered 5 concussions throughout his career. He says, quote, it ultimately comes down to whether the players realize they're not invincible. And I don't mean this week or this year. I mean we're not invincible when we're 45 or 50. Some of these players realize what all this wear and tear on your body can do to you down the road. That is why Warner decided to retire. He knew the risks and didn't want to take them. Unfortunately, most other players aren't that smart. Money is too tempting for them. They simply can't resist. Sure, it comes with a reward, financial security, but everything has a cost. Overall, football is an extremely dangerous sport to play. Few other professions leave the same amount of impact and damage on their occupants. Even after all this, 90% of the players surveyed are happy they play in the league. That said, less than half would recommend it to youth today, because some of them realize what a lasting effect it can have on your body. One powerful quote from this veteran says it all. I have a baseball bat in my son's hand, so that should tell you something.